Goku with a tail. I've never seen that before.
Somebody called these anime tourists, or at least this new rise or era, as the Columbus era of anime.
Anime tourists annoy me. Before I delve into what I mean when I say tourist, I feel like I have to clarify a few things. Firstly, I made this video not too long ago about anime larpers and why they also annoy me. However, I made a distinction in that video. There is a difference between anime tourists and anime larpers. They are not the same. Tourists will just watch like 5 episodes or like 5 shows overall and dip. Larpers don't even watch the shows they claim to love. As I said, anime larpers and tourists are not the same thing. However, anime tourists have a slightly different definition that kind of varies from person to person, so I'll give my definition of what I think an anime tourist is and what an anime larper is, and distinguish the two, and then go on to explain why they're both kind of stupid and stuff. But, as I said previously, anime larpers just kind of straight up lie and pretend to be part of a fandom and pretend to consume a piece of media. Most of the time it's for like clout, PR reasons, to just kind of fit into what's trendy, or it's just because they're too lazy to actually consume the piece of media they're supposedly a fan of. It's always for very superficial purposes, okay? Anime tourists are different, and as I said, a distinction needs to be made. Tourists, unlike larpers, or to use the more classic boomer term, posers, larpers/posers don't consume the media they supposedly enjoy, whilst tourists do. The issue is that tourists only consume what they really enjoy. They consume a limited amount of anime and significantly limit the amount of genres of anime that they consume. However, due to the majesty of the Dunning Krueger Effect, they believe they are well informed on the genres that they consume and the medium as a whole of anime and manga. And overall, a lot of them are just kind of annoyingly loud people who have only seen a couple shows, yet they think they know all there is to know about anime, or at least they pretend to, right? In my experience, tourists tend to kind of congregate around the shonen genre more than anything. You know, Solo Leveling fans, One Piece fans, Dragon Ball, Naruto. There's nothing wrong with any of those series, by the way, don't get me wrong. I like all of those, with the exception of Solo Leveling. That shit's like a psyop. I swear to God, that TV show was made to help kids go to bed early, because it just knocks you out. Nothing is happening. Solo Leveling is just hot garbage, as the French would say. Back onto the topic, the issue with tourists is that they'll kind of stay within the shonen genre in their own little bubble, whilst also criticizing tropes and issues within shonen itself and outside of it, without knowing anything about why or where these tropes come from in regards to like anime history and previous shows, etc. Anime tourists have kind of existed since the dawn of man, okay? This isn't a new concept, and it's not exclusive to anime. You know, you've had music pauses or whatever the hell for years, which isn't to say we should gatekeep stuff. I'm just saying there've always been people who just kind of consume limited material, yet act like they are experts on what they've barely consumed. But in regards to anime, it popped off specifically during the pandemic, when everyone was stuck inside. Obviously, the rates of people casually consuming anime friggin' skyrocketed, and as a result, we got a lot more casual viewers watching popular stuff, which, yet again, isn't inherently a bad thing, but since they don't try to consume anything outside of their bubble, outside of what's popular and trending, it leaves them with a very narrowed view of what anime is and what anime should be. People who would have never consumed anime a couple years ago and would have made fun of you for even thinking about watching it, people who think anime is just exclusively sadistic, they would have made fun of you back in the day. But now, they consume anime too. It's much more homogenized, which is both good and bad. It has mixed results. Obviously, on the good side, with more people consuming anime, more anime comes out, bigger budgets, more movies, more everything. That's great. Just look at the Chainsaw Man movie. Absolute peak. That wouldn't have happened if more people weren't watching, you know? But on the other side, we have a very loud minority of people just kind of yapping to the masses while saying stupid, uneducated stuff, criticizing stuff that has existed for decades in anime and manga. Granted, some criticisms are valid, whilst others, and a lot of the time, are not. I mentioned these fellas in the last video, TheAnimeMen. Their drama, or whatever the hell you want to call it, has been talked about to death. I said they were larpers in the previous video, but they're also kind of tourists. It's a weird dichotomy, because they have some larpers and tourists in their midst, hiding among them. But, I mean, to be honest, most of them are probably larpers, because when they made that video of them watching through all the anime, half the time they're just on their phone. So saying you watch anime when you just scroll through TikTok, are you actually watching anime? Who knows? But they're clearly just fans who watch trendy stuff, making them them more touristy than anything, which they kind of acknowledged, which is good. But obviously the reason most people had heard about TheAnimeMen was not because of their surprising amount of subscribers or people mistyping TheAnimeMen on YouTube. No, it was their dog water video from a while back, which was hilariously bad, but they did make a reply video and try to make amends with a response video, which was just also really really bad, because it was just them reading articles in wiki pages, and they clearly didn't watch anything they were talking about genuinely. In this second video, it is just as bad, if not worse, because it is clearly the most performative thing ever. Yes, the editor did a very good job. The video looks very pretty, but it's clearly very performative. This video tried to quell people's distaste for them, since they kind of showed that they're not only just clueless about anime and manga, but also don't intend to actually watch the shows that they talked about. This is insane to me. Like, this entire response video is genuinely just stupid. Like, this video was no better than the first one, in my opinion, because they all just sound like they're doing a school presentation on a book they haven't read. They don't actually discuss any of the shows in their discussion. They just talk about the legacies that all these shows have and the effect and influence that each of these animes had on their medium and its genres. They don't actually talk about the shows themselves. They've just reworded a wiki article. It's stupid, right? It's granted, to bring it back to TheAnimeMen, comparing it to colonialism was a bit heavy-handed, but it's still funnily true enough. A lot of new modern day anime fans just kind of appear in this fandom after watching a handful of shows and just kind of spout their opinions without any thought, and yet claim to be part of this fandom and say what is good and what is bad. It's really very stupid. So compared to colonialism isn't bad, just a bit goofy, but whatever. Let me say one thing about anime tourism, which is kind of funny and a personal experience of mine. Back in the day, when I was a youth, watching whatever I could get my hands on, everything from Black Lagoon to Black Butler, everything from every isekai coming out, Monster Musume, I was watching literally anything I could get my hands on. I had friends in school when I was a teenager who would make fun of me for watching Dragon Ball whilst they were reading Marvel comics. Okay? They were making fun of me for liking Dragon Ball while they were reading Ultimatum, and if you know anything about comics, that shit is ass, bro. And over time, I converted him, got him into anime, but it made me spot a pattern for people when they kind of start off an anime, and like, not just as like a tourist, but when people get into anime, they kind of always, no one usually stays a tourist forever, okay? Like with my friend, he obviously, because I kept talking about Dragon Ball, he gave in, watches Dragon Ball, goes through it, and everyone just kind of starts with shonen and branches out. That's usually the case. And when people branch out, they become less and less of a tourist, which I think is a weird term anyway, but they tend to go to different genres and different places. They'll watch, not just exclusively shonen, they'll go to more seinen stuff, and then they'll double back and watch, I don't know, some shoujo stuff, like watch whatever, right? Which is good. But nowadays, with this new influx from the pandemic, we're seeing people who just kind of exclusively bubble themselves into shonen, yet still feel free to criticize everything outside of it, which is very strange. They will exclusively make fun of every other genre, while also making fun of shonen at the same time. It's very stupid. I'll take a step back and say there is one thing with anime tourism that I don't disagree with, right? And it's when a new viewer to just anime overall, or reader to manga, consumes some stuff that has like a lot of fan service or questionable stuff, and they call it out. Like, I think that is perfectly understandable to not like fan service. When most popular shows nowadays are in the shonen genre, and in turn those series tend to be within the age demographic, like popularity wise, they tend to be set within the demographic of their readers, so like high school era stuff, right? So yeah, I feel like it's perfectly fine not to like fan service that's set in that age demographic, which is a pretty common criticism among tourists, and I think that is a perfectly justified criticism. Like back in the day, when I was a teenager, like as I was saying, watching Monster Musume and stuff, I enjoyed it, but now that I'm older, I don't really care for it too much. Obviously, I think fan service has a right to exist, sure, whatever. It's been a part of the medium for God knows how many years, but I still think it's a valid criticism to say, hey, it's a bit weird that Bulma is 12 here and Master Roshi's in his hundreds. It's a bit weird. I think that's perfectly fine to call out. It's very strange. Another good example of kind of anime tourists and purists, because there's two sides to it, right, was with Jobless Reincarnation, right? Mushoku Tensei, it's a fun show. Right, strangely enough, I was reading the manga week to week, even though it's like behind the anime from what I remember. It was really weird. Overlord was the same. I don't know why. But anyway, I enjoy a lot of parts of Jobless Reincarnation, right? But there are a lot of parts of it I really don't like. And tourists are right to call out the parts they don't like. Yes, it's weird that Rudius is a grown-ass man. Yes, Rudius changes in the light novels and becomes a better person. But at the same time, his family tree becomes a family square due to having more wives than fingers on his hand, and his children trying to get in bed with other family members. It's a complete mess. But the animation is goated, Geese is pretty cool, and it's a decent play on the isekai formula. But some parts of it, man, it can just take you out, and it's so over the top with some of the tropes, and it really annoys me. And I can get why some people would defend some parts of the story. Sure, if you're a purist, that's fine. But I also think criticism of the tropes that Rudius plays into is more than valid. It's just when it comes from someone who, the people, the zeitgeist views as a tourist, a lot of people will get really angry when they make criticisms because they're new to the medium as a whole. But at the same time, Jobless Reincarnation was recommended to a lot of newer anime viewers since it was a really popular show during its initial season, and it still is when it comes out with a new season. A lot of people who aren't regular anime fans watched it and rightfully criticised it. Basically what I'm saying about this is, though a lot of typical tourist criticisms of anime tend to be surface level and just yapping, similar to a larper, a lot of them just kind of want to jump into whatever's popular, which isn't inherently a bad thing, people can do that. However, that doesn't mean all criticisms should be discounted because they're a newer viewer. It'll just tend to be a different opinion to someone who's been watching anime for a very long time. Yes, you can have typical anime tourists making fun of Goku yelling for 5 minutes when he's going Super Saiyan and calling it corny or whatever, whilst also praising about how much better Gear 5 is in One Piece. Sure. But amidst the anime tourists, there are some competent people who say, hey, Rudius is a grown man, this is pretty weird. You can tell by the gameplay on screen and the overall lack of structure, and this is pretty much just a yap video, okay? But yeah, I think a lot of the louder tourists are just people who would have normally made fun of anime and manga back in the day, and through the pandemic and stuff, and now that's a lot more popular. I mean, just look at the numbers, it's insane. They kind of want to have their cake and eat it too, in the sense that they want to enjoy what is popular, whilst also criticising the tropes and the series that inspired it to make it popular. It's a very strange and almost hypocritical lens to view these series through. But as I said in other videos, I don't think tourists are as bad as larpers in my opinion, because they cross the bare minimum threshold. They tend to actually consume the media they are criticising or enjoying, which is the bare minimum, okay? Granted, tourists tend to purposefully limit themselves to exclusively popular shows, right? Which yet again isn't inherently a bad thing. But at the same time, it makes a lot of their critiques of the genre and the medium of anime and manga feel a lot more shallow and ill-informed, as they kind of don't know what they're talking about a lot of the times. But that doesn't mean their opinions should be completely discounted. Yes, I'm not gonna lie, this video was a little bit late, because all the TheAnimeMen drama and stuff was talked about last year, but since I made a video about larpers, I wanted to still make a video about their slightly better counterpart, the tourists. But to end this video, if your friend is a quote-unquote self-titled anime fan, but all he does is watch the big three, hit him with a brick. He ain't going to lose any IQ points if you do. That being said, doodles my doodles, hopefully see you in the next one. Let me know if you enjoy these yap fests, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Peace.